Welcome to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast with your host, wealth coach Wade Reed.
Hey, what's up, Money Masters? It's Wade Reed here for another episode of the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. And today I just felt super inclined to talk to you about something that I deem extremely important, and that is our perspective on life. Sometimes we need a shift in perspective, a paradigm shift, you might call it, to help us get truly how blessed we really are in the United States. And this hit me like a ton of bricks recently, and I just need to share some things with you that I've learned. Okay, it's right around Thanksgiving time at the time of this recording. We're about a week out from that, and I've got my orange shirt on representing fall, and I've got a book behind my right shoulder for those watching called The Blessed Life. And I just feel such gratitude this time of year. And I know you're listening to this after Thanksgiving, and hopefully you've had a wonderful holiday and looking forward to Christmas season, and again, gift giving and generosity and the ability we have to do that, the ease of access to resources we have to enjoy great foods, time together, transported wherever you need to go by air or by car, with great convenience and great speed and safety. I want to talk about some of the things that set us apart. In the debates recently about the presidential election, there was this discussion about how rich we are as a nation, how we lead the world in terms of wealth. And I think we gloss over that. I think we take that for granted. And my intention today is to give some perspective to really what we have here, so that in that space of gratitude, we can continue to strive and for more, to continue to thrive in what we're doing, to seek out becoming the best version of ourselves, but also just have the perspective that what we have is pretty amazing. So I did some research in preparation for this, and I wanted to come up with like the top 5 things that we have that other nations don't, that the rest of the world doesn't. And the first thing that came up is healthcare. So back 100 years ago, and I did some research 100 years ago, from 1920 to today, what's really different about what life was like just 100 years ago? The wealthy class 100 years ago compared to the low to middle class today. So the main thing is, back then, 1920, high mortality rates, very high mortality rates. There were no antibiotics. There were limited hospital treatments. We were just coming into the possibility of immunizations, vaccinations, surgeries were still very rudimentary. Accessibility to medical care was pretty abysmal. And so we take for granted today the fact that we have emergency rooms, we have ambulances that come get us if we need to. We have 911, so we can get people to come to our home very quickly. We don't have to wait for a doctor to come to our home. We can go to the facility very quickly. And in recent times, we had a situation in my family life where there was an allergic reaction to some food, and the person wasn't able to breathe. And because of that, we had to rush them to the hospital. We took them to an Instacare. They gave an anaphylactic shock, and what do you call those things? Oh, I'm sorry, guys. That thing you jab into your leg that is an antihistamine blocker. Anyway, an anaphylactic shock, you need one of those EpiPens. That's it. So this person needed an EpiPen, but then still had some sort of allergic reaction to that. So an ambulance had to take him over to the emergency room, and we were half a day in the emergency room. And it was a pretty scary thing. But because of the understanding we have about medical care, this person was saved. Their life was preserved because of this. And we only needed a half a day to get through that situation, get home, and recover after that. So it's pretty amazing, the fact that we have medical care so readily accessible, which was not. So again, I'm trying to give perspective to what the wealthy had 100 years ago compared to what we have. And what we have today is extremely better, even for the poorest of the poor in the United States. Now, how about transportation? Back then, automobiles were luxuries. International travel was slow and rare. So think about this. People were traveling by ship 3 weeks across the Atlantic Ocean to go to Europe. And then they would spend a month to 2 to 3 months there. They would have to completely shift what was going on in their lives to be able to take such a trip. It was dramatic what had to happen for time to be taken off to be able to go do such a thing. And it was very expensive. And today, cars and affordable air travel are commonplace. I mean, I flew across the nation multiple times this year to go to different conferences and to help people understand money better and to gain knowledge myself. I went up to Boise, Idaho and back in a single day. An hour plane ride there, spent a few hours there for a race for my son. He was in a cross-country race, and then I came back that afternoon. It was amazing how quickly I could do that. I've been to China. It takes about 16, 17 hours in a single airplane ride from Los Angeles to Beijing. This was back in 2017. I took a trip over there for 3 or 4 days as I was doing a business venture to go visit a manufacturing facility for a toy product that I was working on with my family as an entrepreneurial venture. That was incredible. The following year, we took a airplane ride again, about 17, 18 hours directly from the west coast of the United States up across almost the North Pole to Dubai, and landed in Dubai and spent a day and a half there, and then took another 4-hour ride to get to Kenya, and then spent a couple weeks out on the Kenyan safari doing a camera safari. I'm not a hunter, but I went with my dad, who's he's retired, and so he's doing some traveling. And that is absolutely astounding, the fact that we can spend that many hours in safe airplane travel, where 100 years ago that was an impossibility, just not even fathomed at that point in time. And that was the wealthy class were the ones taking those trips, not the typical low to middle class. How about typical home comforts? Like I'm standing in a home office with electric lighting, with heating. Like it's cold enough at this time of year. I've got my furnace on, central air system that allows for me to keep warm through natural gas pipe directly into my home. I've got a water heater that keeps warm water flowing throughout the house. That's a relatively new thing. That's really less than like 50 years, as I understand it, that hot water heaters are a thing. We have our clothes washing facilities, dishwashing facilities. We have multiple bathrooms, flushing toilets. We have cooling systems in the summer. We have insulated windows to keep out the sound and the cold, and it's not drafty in here. It's like 70 degrees constantly, 70 to 72 degrees in my house. It's amazing. It's like being in Hawaii every day, except not as beautiful. But we just have these comforts. These creature comforts are amazing that we have today. How about communication, guys? Communication. I'm a fanboy of Tesla, the company today owned by Elon Musk, but the inventor, Nikola Tesla, from 100 plus years ago. He envisioned in his autobiography wireless communication being possible. Nobody believed him, but he knew it was possible. And today, that's all we do is communicate wirelessly with each other. In fact, you're doing that right now, listening to this through an internet connection, which is astounding, the fact that we can communicate. I do all day long. My work is through Zoom conferences, video meetings across the nation with people. It is so fun. It is so cool to be able to have a real connection with people through these video mechanisms, internet communication, wireless communication. Absolutely mind-blowing what we can do with that. And now, of course, we're coming into a new age, and the age of AI, artificial intelligence, enhancing our ability to perform functions in our day. In fact, I used an AI to help me write this outline, to do the research, and I did it in about 10 minutes. I didn't have to spend hours and hours researching all the different library, Wikipedia and encyclopedia and books and all that. It was able to source this material and help me consolidate it into this episode. It's amazing what we have today for just a few dollars to have access. In many cases, it's free. I would say just back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was writing handwritten letters and mailing them. When I was out doing missionary service for my church, I lived in France for a couple of years, and I wrote a lot of handwritten letters and sent it through the snail mail system, and a few emails, but a lot of it was still just 20 to 25 years ago, handwritten letters. Imagine that, the fact we have such easy communication today. Back then, it was letters. It was telegrams. It was early phone systems that were wired systems that were just coming online. In fact, my grandmother on my dad's side, she was a telephone operator. She would receive a signal. She would take the plug out of the wall and plug it into the next spot and connect the two different people trying to reach each other. It was literally a manual thing. Today it's electronic, but back then it was a manual thing. All these women sitting against this wall, receiving these notifications. Hey, I need to talk to so-and-so at this number. Okay, let me plug you in. And then they'd get on the other line and say, hey, so-and-so is trying to reach you. Okay. And they would connect people. That was just 50 years ago, 60 years ago that was happening, maybe even less. How about entertainment, guys? We have almost unlimited entertainment options today. But back then, they were limited to live performances, and radio was just coming online. The ability to receive a voice wirelessly was just starting to come about in the late 1920s. Astounding, the fact that this is now ubiquitous and common and totally taken for granted. Today we have streaming services, we have video gaming, we have unlimited online content. In fact, I'm a part of that content library. You're listening to this as a part of that amazing content library. Hopefully this is a little bit entertaining as well as informational. And it just puts us in the right context, knowing some of these things. Now, because this is the Wealth Acceleration podcast, I wanted to talk not just about the external things outside of money. I also wanted to talk about some of the monetary aspects of our wealth in the United States compared to that of other parts of the world. So in the United States, these are some facts that I came up with. The median household income is $80,610 a year. Median means like middle. So if you take the entire range of incomes, the exact middle income is $80,000. Now, if you include the low end and the upper end of that spectrum and get an average, the average household income is $114,395. So the median is $80,000. The average is $114,000 household, two income earners in many cases. Okay. Now, continuing on, I wanted to see what some of the upper thresholds were, the top 20%, top 10%, top 5%, and top 1% of income earners in the United States. The top 20% households are making $142,000. The top 10% are making $234,000, almost $235,000. The top 5% are making $315,500, and the top 1% of earners are making a little over $600,000. So if you're making in the six figures as a household, you're doing quite well. I mean, it's a great income. What's interesting though is perspective, right? I started this podcast with perspective. What I find really interesting is our expectation of lifestyle, given the incomes that we have, feels low, right? An $80,000 to $114,000 income, the median versus the average. A lot of people, I know when I was young, I was like, man, six figures is ridiculous. I can't believe anyone who makes over $100,000. And today it's like, if you're not making $100,000, it's kind of hard to get by because housing is expensive. I mean, $2,000 to $4,000 a month in most cases for an apartment or a modest sized home. Oftentimes $4,000 to $6,000 in today's market for housing. If you're able to purchase a home, it's pretty astounding what things cost now. And so we do need to give that its proper perspective too. We are a wealthy nation, but we also have high costs. So I don't discount that in any way. I just want to give some perspective to the numbers and then compare them to the global numbers. So in the United States, the wealthiest nation in the world, here's the context about the globe. Global income distributions. The median income in the world is $2,920 per year. $2,920 per person per year. That's not a household, that's an individual, 8 billion people. The median, the middle income across all of that. That means there's still some people making a lot less than that. And of course, people making more, but this is the middle income, $2,920 per person. In the US, the median would put you in the top 15% of global incomes. If you're making $80,000 a year as a household, you're in the top 15% globally. The top 20% in the US is equal to the top 2% globally. So top 20% is making $142,500 a year as an individual or as a household. You're in the top 2% globally. And if you're in the top 1% in the United States, you're in the top 0.1% globally. So the perspective on US wealth, like even medium US earners enjoy a higher quality of life than most of the global population. My goodness, we have so much to be grateful for, right? Like I gasp at some of these things. I've been in France, like I said, on my missionary service, I had a lot of immigrants that I got to meet from North Africa and Middle Africa, coming from very impoverished places. I had some people from Romania who were refugees and immigrants into France, who I met, who were living in an abandoned building that had been condemned, and they found a little home for themselves in what used to be a bathroom. The size, maybe even smaller than the room I'm standing in, which is about 10 feet by 10 feet. This is about a 100 square foot room. Their entire family, 2 to 3 children, I can't remember how many there were, but a husband, wife, and at least 2 children were living in this 100 square foot tiny space that used to be a bathroom. It just broke my heart watching this. And they were kind enough to feed us. They had a hot plate and they had a pot and they had some water and some oil and a little bit of bouillon to give it a little bit of flavor, a little bit of salt. So it was just like this broth. That's all they had to offer us in exchange for the word we were sharing with them about God. That put some perspective on me, folks. It was heart-wrenching. Because I walked out of that meeting with that family and I saw their son running off, like waving goodbye to us, and he had this banana in his hands that was black and mushy, and yet it's what they had. They had to beg and borrow and maybe even steal to get some of the resources that they had to survive as a family. Guys, this is happening all over the world. And this time of year, I don't know if you've seen, the church I belong to has these giving machines, and there's a campaign called Light the World. If you haven't seen that yet, guys, look up at Light the World. And you can give meals, you can give chickens, you can give goats, you can give clothing. And we can use some of the wealth we have and be generous to those around the world who are less fortunate. And that's my invitation today. Get out and be generous. Wealth is way more than just money. It's about access to resources, opportunities, and conveniences. So reflect on the immense progress that we've made in the past century. Find a real place in your heart for gratitude. I've heard it said that gratitude is close to godliness. There's a book, if I can remember the name of this one. I think it's to come up with the title, Something versus Power. And this guy does some analysis on different resonances. You know how energies have different resonances, like sound pitches have different resonances? The energy or the resonance of gratitude is the highest on the scale that he created, looking at really negative tones and negative words versus positive words. Gratitude was literally the highest on that scale, which suggested empirically that it was close to godliness. So I invite you guys to find gratitude on a regular basis, daily, find reasons to be grateful for what you have. And I encourage you to share, particularly this episode, this time of year, invite people to have the perspective that we are wealthy. Even though you might feel poor, you might be struggling to make some of your bills because of the nature of the expense in the United States, we're still extremely blessed. We have access to so many things. I invite you to give just a little bit more this time of year. Get out and use Light the World, or perhaps something else like that you can give real world benefit to people, not just dollars, but go give some of your time. If you don't have dollars, give some of your time somewhere. Go do some service for somebody, and recognize that you are, in fact, wealthy. And in the end, one of my favorite definitions of financial freedom comes from one of my mentors, and he said this, that financial freedom is having what you want, but also wanting what you have. We want unlimited things, right? We go and acquire these things, but once you get them, do you actually still want it? Does it give you the fulfillment after you've purchased it to keep it long term? And I want you guys to have that sense that you are wealthy in the context of having what you want, but also wanting what you have. Okay, so I'll leave you with that, guys. Thanks for listening. I love you guys. If you're finding value in this content, please like, subscribe to it, leave some comments, create some dialogue on the YouTube page, do an iTunes or Apple Podcast review for me. That really helps make it more accessible to more people. My mission is to help thousands of people with their financial lives, to have the proper perspective, and to make money easy and fun to work with, not stressful. I want people to have relief and to have confidence they can have a very successful financial life. Guys, take care. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. We hope the insights from today's episode help you streamline your finances and grow your wealth stress-free. For show notes from today's episode and more tips on creating a comprehensive wealth-building plan, visit moneymasterycoaching.com. Remember, financial freedom is attainable. Until next time, keep accelerating towards your goals. See you on the next episode.